Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to another one of our Veg Out videos. My name is Clint, and today we have a science experiment for you. Now, you might have noticed that sometimes food left in your fridge for too long will actually start to grow a little bit again. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. I have examples of 4 vegetables here that you can actually regrow using the scraps. So today we're going to be talking about celery, some green onions, romaine lettuce, and garlic. Now, these are not the only vegetables that will regrow from scraps. Those are just the 4 that we happen to choose for today. The materials you're going to need for this experiment at home are a cutting board, a sharp knife. Make sure you've got an adult with you if you're trying this. You're going to need a few containers to hold your scraps in, and some water. So now that we've got everything, we can go ahead and get started. We'll start with our green onions. Green onions are super tasty. I like to use them as sort of a garnish. To finish out whatever I'm cooking, I'll just dice them up and then, sprinkle them on top. But for the sake of this experiment, we're going to cut them pretty close to the bottom. Then we're left with this. Now, you want to make sure that you don't cut the roots off. Those are going to be important. And then you can use these for whatever you want. We're going to go ahead and use just this small plastic cup that I found inside. That's going to be our container for our green onions. We just want to put them down so that the tips of the roots are sitting in the water. Just like that. Now for our celery, it's going to be the same. Just going to cut it off close to the bottom, just like you would if you were chopping it up for some soup or for some ants on a log. And then I've got just an old Shakespeare's cup here. It's a little big for it, so you might want to try to find something a little smaller, but again, that's just kind of what I had laying around. I'm going to put some water in the bottom of that. Take the celery, just set it in there. I might have filled that up a little too high. You see how it's kind of floating in there? We'll dump just a little bit of that water out. There you go. Just like that. Same with our romaine lettuce. Maybe you want to make a tasty salad, and you end up with a chunk of romaine left. Well, you can take another Shakespeare's cup here. This one seems to have been used for holding crayons, so maybe try to find one that wasn't filled with crayons. But it'll work for us for now. And again, just like that, celery, you're just going to set that right in there. And again, I probably filled that up a little bit too high, because really we just want the bottoms of our vegetables covered. We don't want a whole bunch of the vegetable underwater. So those are all pretty easy and pretty similar. You just set the bottoms of them in water. But then we've got garlic. So let's go ahead and bust up our garlic into individual cloves. We want to try to leave some of the paper on the cloves. You don't want to peel them for this experiment, although you would if you were eating them. So this one's good if you have some garlic that's gone a little soft or a little bit mushy, because if the garlic is still firm, then it's still good to eat. And there's really no reason to turn it into a science experiment. Here we've got a few cloves. So what we're going to want to do with these is just set these kind of around the edge of the plate so that the point is up and the flat bottom is kind of sitting in the base of the plate. And it can be a little tricky to get exactly right. It's easier with larger garlic cloves. You can just set them right in there. Just as long as some of that root is going to be touching the bottom of the plate, because then I'm going to take some of that water, I'm going to fill that plate up just like that. And there you have it, y'all. We've got 4 different vegetables ready to regrow. But you might be a little bit curious about what these are actually going to look like once they start to regrow. So we started some of these about 2 weeks ago. That way we would have some progress pictures to show you. So I'll start out with my green onions over here. So these are looking a little funny because they didn't have as much of the roots on them as you would like. You can see this one started growing some roots back, but it also was starting to flower. So we've got a green onion flower here. And then these ones, they didn't have quite so much root, so they're not doing quite so well. But if you have root on them, then you should just start to get more leaves just like this popping up. And those should go up pretty quick too. Our celery, you can see right here, here's our celery, and then we've got all of this brand new growth on top. Nice, beautiful celery leaves. And if you don't want to wait for it to get big enough to eat them, you could actually use these for the celery coloration experiment we did a couple weeks ago, where you can turn celery leaves different colors with some food coloring. We've got our romaine lettuce here. You can see this one's a little bit slower growing, but we've definitely got some new growth up here from where we chopped it off flat. So you can see there's fresh chopped. Here is after it has been growing a little bit. Then our garlic. You can see the roots have just gone crazy in here. And this plate could use a little bit more water. I'm going to try and not let it dry out. But then it puts off all of these delicious, nutritious shoots, which you can eat. These greens have a super strong garlicky flavor and are really tasty, I think, with some scrambled eggs. We have one other one that we did, just to show you. A little bit of fennel. We chopped that off, and now we've got all this new fennel growth coming right up. So like I said, these aren't the only vegetables you can do this with. You can do this with bok choy. You can do this with onions. You can do it with carrot tops. You cut the top of a carrot off with a little bit of the leaves on top. You'll actually grow some new leaves out of it. Pretty much any plant that you can buy from the store that still has some of the root on it will work for this experiment. And some of them grow new roots back, like the garlic or the green onions, and some of them don't so much, like our romaine lettuce hasn't grown many new roots back, or our celery either. But there's still enough of that original root there that it's soaking up some of the water. And the only other thing to consider when you're doing this experiment is that you want to change the water pretty regularly. If it sits in the same water for too long, the vegetable will just rot and it won't grow back. So I would recommend about once a day changing the water out for fresh water. That way you can make sure you're not getting any gross rottingness on your vegetables. Well, thanks for joining us, everybody. We would love to see if you all did an experiment like this at home. So if you do choose to try that out, go ahead and leave a post or a comment or a message to show us how your experiment worked. Thanks for joining us today, and we will see you all again tomorrow.